Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock, beautiful day. Thank you for tuning in. When I was a kid and I was in school, you know what always got my attention? When the teacher said, we're going to learn something new, right? And now that I do a radio show, I always love when I'm going to learn something new that's true. Not that the teacher didn't teach me things that were true. But yeah, I never heard of the Leviathan. Have you ever heard of this ship, the Leviathan?
No,
Leviathan?
I never have until now.
So there is an amazingly comprehensive look at the greatest untold story of the Civil War. The book is called The Leviathan. Did I hear him tell you that Sting did a song?
Yes.
On this?
Sting did a song and also wrote a play about it.
Is that right?
This is pretty intriguing.
Paul Stack is on the phone, and he put a lot of work into this book, and we will all benefit from it. I can't wait to read it myself. He is a researcher, an historian, an attorney. The Amazon listing says in September 1861, on the cusp of a winter storm in the North Atlantic, 3 men altered the fate of the world by pulling off one of the greatest acts of American espionage in England. Cradle of the Industrial Revolution, the world's largest machine was created, a giant iron steamship 60 years ahead of its time. The Scientific American warned that this colossus could run down the whole of the largest steamers in any other fleet, one after another, without firing a single shot. Let's find out about this. The book is called The Leviathan, and I may be even mispronouncing that, so let's get everything straight right now. Paul Stack, this is going to be fun, and it's an honor to have you on the show. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Larry.
Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Chicago, just outside of Chicago.
All right.
Where it's 2 days ago it was below zero.
And the news said that yesterday in Chicago you had the second most exciting Mardi Gras party in the country. Is that true? Did that happen?
If it was, I missed it because I don't go out Mardi Gras in this kind of weather.
All right, so tell me first of all, am I pronouncing it right?
It's right. It's Leviathan, and what the name means, it's a sea monster in the Old Testament book of Job, where it's associated with the forces of chaos and evil. And it also happened to be the name of the ship at the time it was christened. And so I've used the name the Leviathan. Later on, the ship became known as the Great Eastern, and I think part of that was because so many truly evil things happened with the ship that they wanted to sort of change the marketing of the ship, if you will.
That's interesting. Wow. And so it was a British ship?
It was a British ship. Yeah, it was launched in London in 1858.
Okay, so
on the River Thames.
So by 1858, we're entering into our own Civil War. Was England trying to get us back at that time?
No. It was totally unrelated. This ship was designed for a purpose for which it was never used. It was so enormous that it was designed to carry all the coal it needed to go all the way around the world without refueling. It initially was intended to go between England and Australia, where they had discovered gold. It was strictly a commercial ship. It never went to Australia. And what happened was the purpose for which the ship was built never occurred. It became this giant, advanced, enormously powerful ship, and it had no real commercial purpose. And they were struggling, the owners of it were struggling to figure out what to do. There was a Virginian by the name of Dudley Mann who had been over in Europe years, and he had followed this ship, and he saw this as an enormous weapon. And so he was sent to England by Jefferson Davis as the Confederate commissioner. And what I found out, which has never really been reported or written about, what I found out was that he made contact with the owners of this ship. And the idea was they were going to use the ship to break the blockade. And now, in that regard, I think I love the quote from the Scientific American, which said that this ship could run down any other steamer in the world. And it could. It was so large that if it were in existence today, it would be the largest ship in the U.S. Navy
Really?
Except for our aircraft carriers.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah.
oh, God, oh my gosh. Okay, so he tried to get them to allow him to use it, or was he actually going to buy it?
No, we'd use it.
Use it. Okay, and
Yeah.
tell me how that worked out. I don't want to ruin the book, though, but...
Well, yeah, it's sort of a spoiler alert.
Okay.
Let's just say we don't have a Confederate States of America at the present time. If the ship had
Okay.
gone through,
Yeah.
we would.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, so that didn't work out. So who were the three Americans that, in the book when you refer to Americans... Because I know the South often thinks that the word American doesn't apply to the rebel, the Confederates.
They were Northerners. You had the main one was a man by the name of Alexander Hamilton Schultz, and he was a wealthy owner of a line of tugboats and a close friend of William Seward, the Secretary of State. He was from New York, in New York City. The second person was a man from New Hampshire. He was a young Harvard-trained engineer, and his name was Hamilton Towle. And the third one, I don't know who his name was. That is the mystery of the book. And all I know is that he was there, and he died in the process of preventing the ship from doing it. And so I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out who it could have been. And based upon everything that I know, I'm fairly certain it was a fugitive slave.
Oh, okay. So the three men are kind of the heroes of this story.
Right.
Okay, and are you able, without ruining the book experience, to tell us what they did to squelch the
it happened in the middle of the North Atlantic, and the ship did not sink. I mean, the ship survived. But not in good shape.
Wow.
It was a long time being put together.
Let's talk about the work that you did to bring us this story. How did you find out the details, and how were you able to do your research?
This is a strange story. My wife, back in 2000, bought me a book for $0.25 at the public library, a used book. It was called The Great Iron Ship. And it was sort of a popular history of the Great Eastern. It didn't mention any of this, but it was sort of a popular history of the ship. And I got interested in it, so I started going on the Internet and buying things like old newspaper articles from it, old pictures, and so forth. One day in 2001, there's an item on the Internet auction, and it's a shell, a troca shell. And I'm looking at it, and it's carved. The troca shell is like an upside-down cone, like a child stacking toys.
Okay.
At the lowest level is a profile of the ship, and it says the Great Eastern, 24,500 tons. Okay. Right above it is a picture of a gate with a wind-blown tree. It says Tomb of A. Lincoln, President of U.S. And I'm looking at this, and I'm going, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
The tomb was a representation of the first tomb Lincoln was put into, and Lincoln is buried in Springfield, Illinois. I've been to his tomb, and it's the first tomb he was put into. So this shell goes back to probably about 1866, 1867. So it's very old. I know Lincoln pretty well because Illinois lawyers really spend a lot of time just kind of reading books on Lincoln, and he's sort of our patron saint, if you will. I never heard of the Great Eastern. I never heard of the ship. I've talked to other people who are experts in Lincoln. Never heard of the ship.
Really?
Never
Oh,
Lincoln never saw it, never wrote about it, never thought about it, nothing. And so my question is, why are these two things on the ship, on the shell? And I concluded that somebody was trying to tell a story. Somebody was trying to recall an event, and it was put on the shell. The shell ultimately ended. I bought it from somebody in Australia. And checking with a guy in Australia, I said, where did the shell come from? And he said, all I know is that it came many years ago from a gentleman from England. That's it. So assuming that there was a connection, the two, that's where I started my research. And I started going into the Civil War documents, looking at any kind of correspondence or any kind of material that mentioned the Great Eastern. Now, the first thing I ran across was a letter that Charles Francis Adams, who was our ambassador to England in 1861, wrote a letter to Seward, Secretary of State, saying that I have some more documents to give you, but I can't hold off because Captain Schultz has to leave on the Great Eastern. And so I said, okay, who's Captain Schultz?
Yeah.
And so that's when I hired genealogists. I did a lot of research. My background, I'm a lawyer, but part of my background, I was trained as an assistant U.S. attorney, and so we had training in basically how do you document and investigate conspiracies, and that's basically what I did. It's the same type of training, and it started going through documents. Unfortunately, I travel a lot in business. I'm sort of semi-retired now. But I had a lot of business in England, and I would go and I would use the British Library there, and then I would come back and I did research in New Orleans rather. I did research in New York. I did research in all sorts of places to try and figure this story out. And after about 16 years, I figured it out. I've told it as best I can tell it.
Really?
Nobody left any journals. Nobody left any letters. Nobody left. It's just putting things together.
And you figuring it out now gives us another piece of the puzzle that we never even knew we were missing. And I'm wondering if figuring it out helped you better understand the artwork on that shell you were describing.
Yes, and that is in the book. I now know what the shell stood for.
Can you share that with us?
Well, there's one more symbol on the shell that did not appear at the auction, but it's above the tomb, and it's crossed wings. There's nothing written on it, but crossed wings are crossed feathers. That was the real puzzle to me. I could not find that identical symbol anywhere. And then it dawned on me that that's a common type of symbol, not exactly that type, but crossed wings were used on tombstones in Victorian times to show souls ascending to heaven.
So, can I take a guess at it? The symbolism is that Lincoln's legacy is on the shoulders of the three men who defeated the Leviathan, or the Great Eastern. Well,
that's right. There would be no Union had they not succeeded.
Wow.
But I think the actual crossed wings applies to the fugitive slave because he died.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh. Does the book have a picture of that shell in it?
No, but you know what? If you go to www.september1861.com.
Okay.
That's September1861.com. I have a lot of contemporary pictures of the ship, and I also have pictures of the shell.
Do you think that because the ship was so massively constructed to every detail that the designers that designed the Titanic used part of this design?
Yeah, I'm sure they did, because this was leading. There was no technology around that good. Now, the Titanic was 60 years later. Mm-hmm. So when they built the Titanic, they had welding and they had electrical power and so forth. The Great Eastern was built when they had steam power and human muscle, and that was it. A lot of the technology, I think, was absorbed in that. Now, people said, well, how is it compared to the Titanic? It's not quite as long as the Titanic. It's much wider than the Titanic, and its coal carrying capacity is 3 times the amount of the Titanic. So this thing is massive. It was designed initially to hold 3,000 passengers. In an emergency, it could use as a troop carrier and carry 10,000 troops.
Wow.
Gosh, so maybe even our aircraft carriers were designed after that in the width and the length.
Yeah, I mean, yes. This thing was designed not particularly as a warship, although that's really what it was, because, if you take a look at the pictures, this thing was like 7 stories out of the water. It was all iron. It had an iron armored bow. But it was not designed. It was simply designed to carry this vast amount. And after the war, Cyrus Field, an American, bought the ship, and he used it to lay the transatlantic cable. And it was so big it carried the entire transatlantic cable.
Oh my!
Oh my gosh! You have just introduced us to a story. I just bought the book while you were talking. By the way, I mean I know you sent it to one. I'll give that to a listener. But I just was on Amazon. I had that one-click thing, so I just ordered this one. Oh my gosh!
well, thank you very much.
I don't ever. Well, I do that once in a while, but very rarely, right, Robin? Do I actually do that? But oh my gosh, this is so fascinating to me. So, where is the ship now? It didn't sink. Where is it now?
It's in railroad tracks, and it's in bridges, and it's
no!
It was broken up. Yeah, it was broken up.
Oh my gosh!
Well, you have to remember, it was a huge amount of iron.
Yeah.
And,
oh my gosh!
And ships get broken up. They that happens. And to a certain extent, it's unfortunate because you forget about them when they get broken up. The BBC had a program about 10 years ago, a 7-part series called The 7 Wonders of the Industrial Age, and include the Hoover Dam and include the Brooklyn Bridge and so forth. And one of the things was the Great Eastern. All 7 of those industrial wonders survived except for the Great Eastern. And that's what happened.
As I look through the gallery on your website, for those who want to see what I'm looking at, the website is theleviathan.info. But what was the one you gave me? That's not what I typed.
There's a link to it. September1861.com.
Okay, September1861.com.
That will take you to that website.
So I want to say something about the gallery. There was photography back in Abraham Lincoln's day, which would have been about the same time. But none of these are photographs. They're all artists' work, and they are amazing. I mean, these are incredible drawings of something that we wouldn't even know about if it weren't for this work.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Back in the 1860s, they did not have the technology to reprint photographs in newspapers or journals. So what they did is they took a photograph, and then they brought it in, and apparently they blew it up.
Oh.
And then they had a whole bunch of artists sit there, and each of them had a block of wood, and they carved their little segment of the block of the wood, and then it was all put together, and then they were printed it as a wood print.
Oh my gosh, that's fascinating in itself too.
Yeah, the technology there of talk about labor intensive. I mean, you've had all these gifted young artists there with knives and chisels cutting into it. But it is fascinating. And I think if you take a look at the first picture you come on when you have September 1861 and look at that ship.
Yeah, I was looking at it, yeah.
Yeah, you take a look at those anchors. They're 4 stories tall.
That is amazing. The book is huge too, by the way. The book is as huge as the ship we're talking about. 524 pages. I just looked at the last number. So how let's see. Did you feel like you found all the pieces to the puzzle? 16 years.
No.
Okay, there's still some missing, right?
I did not. Yeah, because there's nobody ever wrote about it. They couldn't have written about it, and so I had to reconstruct it. A good example would be like a criminal conspiracy to rob a bank.
Oh my gosh!
These robbers don't write letters to each other. Dear Lefty, we're going to rob the bank. Are you free? So forth.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, and so when you try the case, it's always who was here on that day, who was there on that day, who called up this, and so forth. And so that's why I'm not really a historian. A historian likes a story that already exists, and then they sort of work around it. I'm basically an attorney. I'm basically almost like a prosecutor building the case up. You deal with evidence on a different level.
This is an award-winning book. I already know it is. You have. Has anybody come to you to maybe take this further? I don't know if a film would do it justice or not. It's usually a big book like this cannot be done justice. Did Sting do justice? What did he do? He did a movie, or what did he do?
No. He did the song, the Ballad of the Great Eastern. Yeah, his family had been involved in shipbuilding for years, and
really?
Yeah, and so he wrote a play about the last ship that was being built by the shipbuilding company, and about everybody was so depressed that their jobs were going. But as part of that, initially he wrote the song, "The Ballad of the Great Eastern." But ultimately, I went to the play, but it was not used.
Okay.
But it's a great song. If you like Celtic music, it is. It's very powerful Celtic music, and it's very dark.
You know, maybe this is a stupid question, but I just have to ask. When I was a kid on Long Island, there was a department store called Great Eastern. Is there a connection there?
There could be. There was a lot of places. Great Eastern was all over the place. They built a Great Eastern port or a wharf in Portland, Maine, because they thought they could get the Great Eastern there. There was music. There was the Great Eastern Foxtrot. Just all sorts of stuff. It was an international thing. If you look at the newspapers, the New York Times was filled with this, and so forth, and Harper's, and all of the Vanity Fair, all of the journals at that time had articles on this. Jules Verne wrote a book about it called Floating City. It was enormously popular, and then of course after it disappeared, all of that evaporated. So there could very well have been a Great Eastern relationship, yeah.
And the book is such a wonderful story. You also have a timeline incorporated in the book within each of the segments. And as a reader, you don't even notice that. It is so fluid. It is just, it's something that you don't want to put down.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it took me a while to figure out how to do this. And I have to tell you truthfully, I did not intend to write a book initially. I intended to find out what the shell was all about.
And the shell's only 4 inches tall, by the way. It's only 4 inches. I looked at the little ruler you had there.
Yeah, and I found myself a couple years into this saying, wait a minute, I think I know what happened here, but I got to fill it out. But what do I do with this information?
Oh, I love that.
In the website, I have all of my source documents. You'll see a little tab there that says source documents.
I do see it, yeah.
It's 1,200 pages of source documents. They're all the original documents, and they're all typed, so they're all searchable. And they're all listed chronologically. A lot of those have never been seen before. Some have. Some are out there, but a lot of them not.
Oh my gosh, Alexander Hamilton Schultz! He's got a name that we won't forget, huh?
No.
All right, so there's a museum in Ireland because I just looked for the Sting song. Here's the problem I'm going to have with the Sting song. In doing the podcast, they won't allow any popular music like that. So I wish I could put it. I could put it on the air here on the radio, but I think this is such a great story that I want to put this on the internet also as a podcast.
Yes.
And it'll get flagged. So for those listening and wondering, hey, how come you're not, because it's easy enough to find. And I did find the song on here on YouTube, but if I put it on the recording, it'll mess up the chances of it getting out there. But anyway, it led me to the National Maritime Museum of Ireland. Do they have some of the artifacts from the ship?
I'm sure they do. There's a lot of artifacts out there. I think the funniest one is I ended up corresponding with a man in France. He has a full set of the original china.
Oh my gosh! How fabulous is that?
So
That's a treasure.
When they broke up the Great Eastern, there was stuff all over the place. In fact, it was just when it went to New York on its maiden voyage, there were so many people aboard it that being New Yorkers, they were unbolting things and taking them off and so forth, and so. There's pieces of it all over the place.
Wow, this is a classic.
Bells and whistles.
How do you follow this one? What are you going to do next? How?
Boy, somebody's asked me that. I said it took me 15 years to write this one. Okay, I'm 72, so if you do the math, if I write another book, I'm probably going to need a gopher to deliver the galleys.
Oh my gosh! All right, somebody out there, you're going to love this. I have a copy. I'm going to give it away for free. If you call right now, 622-9622, I will give you all a chance because I know there's a delayed signal in some areas. So as soon as I see the phone lines and they're starting to light up right now, so I'll pick one at random. Look at that, Robin. Look at the lines.
I know, this is great.
All right,
this is fabulous.
As soon as give me about 30 seconds and I'll click one at random and then you have the book. But you can all buy it. I just bought it on Amazon. It's real easy. And the website, can we buy it on your website also?
Yeah, I have links on the website to vendors.
Give me the address again.
September1861.com.
All right. Let me see. I'm going to get the author to pick a winner. Pick a number from 1 to 20. 1, 2, 3, 5. 27. Pick a number from 1 to 27.
You want me to?
Yeah.
Yes.
14.
14. 1, 2, 3, 5. 14. Here you go. Here's the winner. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
This is Gene.
Gene. All right, Gene, you got the book. It'll be waiting for you.
I am so honored. I am so honored.
That is cool. You're going to love this one. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for being on the air. I love that interview.
Thank you very much. Thank you, James.
This is Larry. Same name as the alligator. Same name as the alligator. All right, we'll take a little break.
Larry.
We'll be right
All right, Robin. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. President Trump's former attorney speaks again privately with members of Congress.
Michael Cohen